When's the last time you experienced wonder? Wonder is an incredible thing to experience as a child, and no less incredible as a grown up. It's an open door that can lead to new opportunities and help you to make sense of the world around you. You just have to let yourself step through it with an open mind and a willingness to find out more. Renae Sayers is Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Curtin University School of Earth and Planetary Sciences. Join us as we speak about debriefing with the stars, embracing wonder and the process of inquiry, and how STEM is a passport that you can use to navigate your future. I'm Michelle Ong, and this is STEAM Powered. Before we dive in, a quick note. This episode is proudly part of National Science Week and has been registered as an online event. National Science Week was established in 1997 and it's grown into one of Australia's largest festivals as a community-led grassroots celebration supported by the Australian government. It runs from the 15th to the 23rd of August with heaps of free events happening both in person and online right across the country. If today's conversation sparks something in you, head to scienceweek.net.au to find an event near you or online and get involved. Now, let's get into it. Good morning, Renae. Thank you so much for joining me on STEAM Power today. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you about your journey again.
Yay! Absolute pleasure to be here. Strangely enough, this is a favourite topic of mine.
Who would have thought? Well, when we had a chat last week, we spoke about all sorts of things and everything, which is wonderful. Really love that. But we covered a little bit about how you're in astrophysics, how that was the start of your journey. But that wasn't quite the start of your journey, because the bit that I loved about hearing was the fact that you debriefed with the stars when you were a kid. And I would love to know more about, or I'd love to share more about, how you started doing that as a practice.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Picture this, like, young teenager sitting outside on the back steps of our home. I grew up in the foothills of the Mount Dandenongs. Just muttering what appears to be herself, but the justification is clearly I was conversing. I shouldn't say with the stars, maybe to the stars, because technically there was an actual broadcast back as far as a conversation in the traditional sense of two people. So
there were vibes.
There was plenty of vibes. And again, I guess, the more kind of wise, 4 decades on, like, perception of that is, just being able to talk through things in a place where I felt safe and contained, and it wasn't really, going in. No one was listening. It was basically just giving me that opportunity to kind of make sense of what was going on in my head, and having this kind of vastness to be able to zoom in and out of that sense of inquiry. And I really did enjoy that practice. I think if I call it a practice, I guess it really did become a practice, but it really was, there was a bit of intentionality around it. And I think that sense of awe and wonder mixed in with this sort of like analytical kind of thinking and expression was probably my way of trying to make sense of stuff in these sort of different intensities. So genuinely that became something for me as I was young, kind of growing up. And I guess the word is maturing, Michelle, but we're seeing the effects of that one still, I guess. And
it's a process.
I think it's just such a process. So I think really that beginning of realizing that asking questions and being curious and having permission to do that, even just on my own and in a sacred little space that was the, beautiful rickety wooden stairs of our balcony that outlooked these incredible trees I grew up in a place called Boronia over east in Coolin Country in Melbourne. And yes, there was a lot of trees, but we could kind of see through the horizon. Interestingly, as the years and decades went on, more and more as things obviously were cleared, but the sky was always there and was always available. And I think that was when my folks were trying to support me, like, they don't have a science background, didn't really know what a scientist is. We didn't know anyone that was scientists. That was where the stars and therefore the astronomy and astrophysics kind of came from.
I think that's something that a lot of us kind of take for granted these days, just in the fact that you allowed yourself to slow down, to think about these things and to ask these questions and not expect an immediate response, because you could mull over it and kind of turn it over in your head without having to feel rushed to have the answers immediately in front of you.
Absolutely. And that actually was the process. And I think being comfortable in an essence about that uncertainty, and that it genuinely asking questions is that process. It's not a binary, I ask, I get, and everything is solved. Although in some cases it can be quite helpful to actually know the answers to things. And it does sometimes work like that. But I think the deeper stuff that intersect across different places, whether that's literally yourself and how you think and how you show up in the world, and then how you make sense of that world, including how you make sense of other people. And then ultimately that zooming back out again of, looking at the horizon or looking up to the sky.
Perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to the sort of maybe intentionality of that process, yes, it was helpful for me as someone making sense of herself and the world and my place in it. It was a great thing to do. But it really did, I think, help me practice that question asking and being okay with that process.
Yeah.
Is how I'm going to frame it in my wisdom looking back.
Whatever works, because this is how you got to where you are now. Like, it's part of that process and that journey of learning about asking these questions and finding those connections and just being prepared to be open to all these answers, which is amazing. So, as you were getting older, at one point you decided, hey, I'm going to write to NASA. And, they wrote back. It's like, oh my God. So,
absolutely.
What made you think to actually write to NASA? Because I think when we're here, it feels so remote. And, they are NASA. And when you're a kid, you hear about this big, important thing that they do and the kind of organization that they are. And, it doesn't feel very tangible. So what made you think, I'm going to write them a letter and see what happens?
Well, I mean, this is, it's actually really lovely. I really do love this memory. And it's very helpful because I do work and have worked with NASA. I've gone to multiple different, labs and sites of theirs. It's an interesting thing now that has been the trajectory. This story definitely makes sense as a little bit of an origin piece because of, I think, in the end, where I have been able to traverse. So I definitely appreciate that. And the other thing I was just going to say is, like, there's a modern version to this. And, back in the day, I was 15, 16 maybe. And I guess where I was on the family computer, like the one device that you had to share with your whole family. This is, early, I'll say early 2000s, but it's that place, right? And so you had the family computer. And this was actually when you could surf the web, where you would go and click on something and that link would take you somewhere else. I mean, what a novel concept, the internet. So wind the clock back to the old days. So genuinely was surfing the web. And I think one of the things when I realized, and again, also, I don't know what other 16, 15-year-olds were using the internet for, but I certainly was traversing across NASA. And similarly to that whole looking up in the sky and, it was beautiful. It was pretty. It was awe-inspiring. That was part of like watching and looking in to all of their beautiful pictures. And yes, like those early Hubble telescope images and even like the modeling as well, being able to see the products of what this effectively another country's government agency. Can we just be clear with that? I mean, like when NASA launches something or like lands, the 7 minutes of terror on on like with Mars. Like I remember literally in SciTech, we live streamed it in the theater and we were cheering for another country's government agency's like KPI milestone. Like that we'll have like the logo, we'll be like, yeah, we did it. Isn't that amazing? Like just to be really clear, that's what we're doing. And isn't that incredible? And it tells you something about what they're actually doing. And we'll come back to that in another moment, I'm sure, of a thread. But that's effectively it. I was looking at this other world. It's Australia. We don't have an agency. You know, we're great at astronomy, but it's not the same. And I didn't know about that at the time, by the way. And so literally clicking on these incredible things and going around and just kind of being caught in it. And then genuinely stumbled on to the Office of Space Science and Public Outreach. And then it was like, huh? And the pictures I was seeing were like scientists and engineers and working with teachers and people and kids and in lecture theatres or in expos, or like they're opening the labs, they're bringing people in, they're going out to the communities as well. Like, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like they're talking to people about how cool this is. And I was like, I like always want to talk about how cool this is. What is the thing they're doing? Is that a thing that they're doing that like I could do? Like that would be amazing. And so that was actually what prompted when I really kind of got stuck into it. I was like, what is that? And then I found I can't even remember. It was like I don't even think it would have been a contact form. It probably was just like an email at the bottom of the page, and bashed out a bit of an inquiry, basically like, I found this. What is this? What are you? What do you call it? And Australia, in Australia, and I'm just trying to work out like what I could study and what I do. Like I don't know what it is. Tell me what the thing is. Like, help, please. This is cool. And I got an email back. And of course, because living in that world now and embedded in academia and, working across engineers and scientists and, industry here and community there and university culture here, like, absolutely yes. If you get an email from someone that's like, I love what you do, I don't know about it, I want to know more. Like, it's tools down. It's, of course I would want to talk about this than the other, like, paperworky, boring thing or report or, like, all the stuff that we do as grown-ups. No. So I get it now. I get why they wrote back, but it was pretty profound. And that answer was them saying, so he was an engineer, and he had said that these are NASA scientists and engineers, sometimes teachers who've gone and like retrained or the other way around. And yeah, we want to connect with the public, and we live in this community where everyone is. Like when you think of where Ames is or Goddard is, like there's a community around these like facilities, and it's part of the sort of community fabric of that. And NASA's deliberately spread all around the different states, but it's amazing the way that they've integrated themselves into the DNA of that country effectively. So what they were saying is, we care, we want to open it up, and like, we love sharing. And actually, this is what we call EPO, so Education Public Outreach. It's a form of science communication. And I was like writing, scribbling. I was like, this is amazing. And I was thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to just like go to the US. Where can I do this in Australia? And so that information genuinely led me to basically to find out where science communication is taught. And that, I mean, it's taught in lots of places now, but the kind of premier place at the time was at ANU, and they had both an undergraduate degree as well as a postgrad, it's now a master's, I believe, in science communication. And the postgrad program was the Shell Questacon Science Circus. Yep. And I was like, bingo, there we go. That's what I want to do. After my degree, what should I study there? Like, if I have to study it, I was like, how to get into that? I was like, what are the things that you need to that? And it was effectively like a good score on a science degree, and then like all of this other stuff that you would imagine. And it ended up having, like an application video where I ended up having ping pongs kind of in my hair and like dunking balloons inside a liquid nitrogen little carrier, and then pulling them out like a magician in a rabbit, pulling a rabbit hat out. Also, we can talk about that later. But this I had no idea.
Scientists are just theatre kids at heart, I feel.
Well, I mean, again, you kind of, you're engaging with the world and the universe. And in some ways, there's an element of performance to that as well. And there's a process. And sometimes you have a script, sometimes you absolutely don't have a script. And it's a bit like on improv. But it's absolutely, you're convening with reality. And we're doing our absolute best to make sense of the best version of reality that we have. And we can update that as we go. It's the best framework as humans that we have developed to make sense of reality, hands down, like as far as what it is, and it's like the rigors around it, and the process, yes, of peer review, and again, but just as a process, it's systematic wonder. That was a quote from somewhere many years ago. I cannot remember.
That's an amazing quote, though.
Systematic wonder, isn't it? And I think, and again, this was part of, for me, Michelle, this whole like never really fitting into one definition or box or, yes, I was this sort of like very whimsical and expressive and engaging component. And then there was like this like systems-y desires, like analytics and there was just these worlds, and they just, for me, always complemented each other. And I think being an outlier, didn't quite appreciate or notice too much how much I may have been sort of out like in the seams of things as well. And I think that was probably another helpful thing. And then I was like, yeah, so what am I going to study? Science, but what kind? And I was like, well, I kind of like the stars. What's that? That's astrophysics, that's astronomy, all of the interesting instruments that we use to make sense of things we cannot touch, and we can only get light. And at the time, that's actually all we could get was energy from the universe. Now we can receive and prod and make sense of gravity as well. So great, physics has a second tool, which is brilliant. But yeah, how do you make sense of this? And loved the language of maths, and again, creating tools that were extensions of our human inquiry. Like, how cool is that? Yeah, and so I did physics accelerated in high school, so which meant that I finished in year 12 in year 11, and then had all sorts of drama and theatre and lit and very expressive, sort of humanities, languages, all that sort of stuff in year 12, and then finished that and I was like, see you later, I'm off to go get an astrophysics degree, bye. And I remember there was a bit of people who weren't aware of the sort of physics and maths kind of stuff. And yeah, that's where I found myself. And I was like, well, I'm here to get into the circus. Hi.
I love that, because that's such a... you only need the science degree to get into science circus for communication. It's like, I'm just going to go for it. Astrophysics, going to just go hard. And especially because a lot of people go, that's not a route that normally people would go through. Like, I want to do science communication. Why would you do astrophysics? I want to do astrophysics, but then why would you do all the theatre and stuff? But all of that works together. Even if you're not getting into science communication, even if that's not the area that you want to develop your career in, they're still incredibly complementary, because you are allowing yourself to be fully curious about everything without boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So one of the questions I was going to ask you was, when you started to do the astrophysics, where did you see yourself? But clearly you saw yourself in the circus.
Yep. And maybe that was part of the liberation as well. I had phenomenal folks, love my parents, and they gave me lots of gifts. One of them was never asking, this is all well and good, Renae, but what's your job going to be? Like, what's your actual plan here? And my gosh, as again, that sense of permission, that sense of being able to be a mashup of what you let in, and that curiosity, that inquiry, curiosity-led inquiry was really powerful. So they were like the two levels of influence, in the sense of like, I guess they could see that I just had that sort of passion and persistence, and also like keep Renae busy is like, just get her in all the things, which was a theme growing up as well. It was like little athletics over here, basketball, dancing, netball over here, playing keyboard at some point, debating club. It was like all of the things keep her busy, which I'm so grateful for, right? Because, again, we're a mashup of what we let in. So that for me was a sense of permission. It was like, well, yes, I am here because, I love I loved astrophysics. I loved physics and maths and sciences. And I also was able to stack my degree in a way, instead of doing like a double degree of arts and science, which was also part of what I thought the plan had to be, when I realized that there were so many crossovers, and literally down to the point of you could take a unit and it could class towards, like, it's either a science unit or an arts unit. Things like psychology, philosophy, and like even like, because obviously there's a lot of statistics in psychology and like the philosophy of science, and even like journalism. I was able to get one of the units because it was science communication leaning. Yeah, one of that journalism. Oh no, I used my journalism unit to like just do science projects of like communicating. That's right. So I was able to kind of stack my degree in a way that meant the things that I was interested in and that I like enjoyed were just sort of packed in there. And then, yes, I had stuff that I had to do, but I kind of loved that. Like, I loved atmospheric science. Like, that wasn't part of the plan, but I really enjoyed it. I was like, clouds are cool, you know? Like, clouds are really cool.
Yeah.
And even studying logic and reasoning in philosophy, and there was another unit in philosophy, and I loved philosophy. It was a time, self, and freedom. I actually still have the paper course book. Actually, I love it, and because time travel is part of the kind of vehicle to really explore time, self, and freedom, right?
Yeah.
And so I loved that again, in the sense I was just like, I was like, I can't believe this is actually what I get to do as a unit, right? Like, this is counting towards my degree, everybody. I'm not sure if you realize this. And on the other side, when it came to philosophy and logic and reasoning, I was like, all my maths, I was like, guys, I got this. Got this. I can't remember if I told you this when we were chatting. I was like, I got this, you know, don't mind me. And I kind of came into this thinking, yeah, my maths brain, logic, reasoning, got it. That was like one of my worst performing. Like, it took a lot halfway through to recover from that.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, embarrassing slightly, but also not. Like, I was bringing the wrong, maybe mindset, framework. I don't know how I'm going to like analyze this 20 years on plus, but it really did show me that I was bringing the wrong tools to the ask. And I will always remember this test that we did, and it was a really early on test. And I know I appreciate they're trying to challenge the crew and kind of get them thinking about stuff. And it was like, the question was, you know, are these like logically consistent or something? I can't remember the phrasing, but it was like, you can swallow your own head. I was like, oh, whatever. Of course you can't. You know, went through it like this of like, logically speaking, of course you can't. And I was wrong. That's what I'm saying. Like, I flunked this test so bad because I wasn't thinking about, I was thinking about what was logical versus what was physically logical or possible, in the sense of like the world governed by maths and physics, or even just like the technology that we have in order to do stuff. And so that thinking, again, being grounded in what the rules and the structures and the processes and, like, you know, the analytical reasoning, but then you can also use some of that to actually think out and beyond. And I actually think that I am better for that process. And at no point, Michelle, did anyone ask, why are you studying that? What is your job going to be? If they did, I didn't hear them. But I just wanted to say that is so releasing for someone who is so, I mean, gosh, so young. I mean, we're so young still. Come on.
Yeah.
And to be in the joy of learning and making sense of yourself and the world, like, these are powerful, powerful tools. And we, through the ages, have created incredible systems of thinking, systems of knowledge, including, and I'm not just talking about Western science as well, like Indigenous knowledge systems. And, you know, we have done that. That is a very human thing, right? And being able to think through and make sense of, like, depending on the problem set, what are your assumptions? What are we testing? How are you testing them? Like, science is just one of those really powerful, brilliant tools that we can use. But it is aided and complemented by, I guess, the rest of this incredible, very human amazingness that we've created, as far as getting stuff from our brains into other people's brains and into making sense of this incredible world. So I think we're up to 2007 here. And me loving my degree. No. It was a really, really great thing. So yes, I didn't feel like I had to define or to your question, it wasn't like I was seeking permission and I had to say to everyone else what I was going to do and be.
Yep.
And I'd love to see more of that, to be honest, in the sense of, and this is not to move away from the very real, very practical component of like, people want to have good jobs and get paid and do good stuff. And like, you have to go through that process. And often, you know, everyone's got different constraints and choices that they have to make. And I guess there's just this feeling of this logical chain, this very linear, like I do this, I come out with that, and then I'm good. Like, even if you're going into a field that now today looks like it's got great job prospects, you're going to earn great money coming out as a graduate, it's relatively stable and secure, like each kind of iteration looking back, like that's not the forever situation, right? And what works for your parents is not going to work today, you know, or might not work. It might be like a model that needs updating. And so I just think, yeah, when I speak with people that today are trying to make choices and make sense of their pathway, you know, you sometimes see the sort of like angst in sort of sometimes parents' eyes of like, what's the one that to do to help them? Because the world feels very uncertain, more than ever before probably as well. And so there is a bit of angst and fear. And if I'm going to do this and invest in this, literally with time and money, what am I going to get?
I think that's all the more reason for approaching it in that completely unbounded way, because we don't know what the future is going to be. Things are moving very quickly. Even in the last century, you've seen the acceleration of technology, like the leaps that we have made in knowledge and understanding of the world around us has, you know, been exponential. And it's just going to keep happening. And we can't use these linear structures to determine what our future will be when none of it is linear. So being able to, you know, explore and look at what we enjoy, what we can do, what our skills are, what we can cultivate, and figure out how that will fit anywhere is probably what we need to do. The specializations and things like that, that's still going to be a thing, but we can apply the specializations in all sorts of places that we don't know exist yet.
Yep. And I think also it's the things of like, what is your toolkit? What are the things, or like a passport maybe, right? Like I think of, at least with STEM specifically, studying STEM is sort of, it's building your passport to help you navigate an uncertain future, right? But it's your passport. So the stuff needs to be yours. And I mean this in the sense of finding your right fit. And if you're enjoying something, that's a massive indicator, because if you decide, I'm going to do this career and that's the thing. I mean, we hear all the stats and the, you know, we're going to have 5 to 8 careers in our life, et cetera, et cetera. You can always go and retrain. You can always, like, the pipeline of like primary, secondary, tertiary, grad, job, ta-da, like I'm done, see you later. Like, just, that's really, really, really not quite the thing. I mean, even if you go and study medicine, like there's constant learning and training and changing within the, like, trying this particular discipline out and this type of context, and where you end up, you know, going rural for medicine or in a hospital or like in a sort of specialist, like this constant change. And that feeling of, you know, what is it that is going to help you navigate that? Because either you will change and or the world will change within any given path, right? So if you've got like you and the path are constantly moving. Professor Hannah Fry, if she ever listens to this, or anyone who knows, I love her. I love you, Hannah. I love her. You inspired a lot, by the way, Hannah and Professor Hannah, including a show that I wrote called Maths and Explosions at SciTech. It was a great show, and that's externally validated, not just because of what I think. That's why she has these 2 things, and it's like, as far as coming down to choices and how to like make choices, and particularly for this question of anyone making sense of their path, their choice. Regret, minimization, and micro ambitions. And those 2 things combined provide a really good iteration framework, rather than this is my path. And that feeling of like chasing your dreams, it's like you probably won't get there to your dream, or your dream will look different, and but it's got a pretty good idea of like, follow that energy, follow that. It's like that, you know, strong convictions loosely held kind of thing. Like, have strong dreams, but hold on to them loosely so you are making sense of how you're not going to make choices that you will regret. And that there's a micro ambition framework of like, oh, it's like the Elsa next best thing. What was the song in Frozen 2? Like the next best thing.
Yeah.
Anna's the one. She's cave or something, and the
I have
snow
forgotten.
everyone's yeah. So it's that next best thing, right?
Yes.
So I think that's a really powerful way of thinking about it. And if you have the interest, then I don't think the box that you should be applying it for this thing down the future that it may or may not exist, or you may not have that awareness of, you know, fixing it in that sense. Like, we value science in so many ways. And yes, we can go into many directions for this, but I'm just going to say our chief scientist, Professor Hammett, he did a presentation in Perth in May this year, 2016, and he's kind of touched on this with his sort of Science Meets Parliament and the sort of the talks that he's done, and it's along the lines of, to have a really healthy like science ecosystem, you need to have both discovery and translation. And in this case, he was talking very specifically around, you know, the role of that fundamental science feeding into commercialization and like industry outcomes. And if you are someone that follow the sort of political kind of federal Commonwealth, like all of that rhetoric around science, it's actually just the method for industry, talking a lot about that sort of industrial kind of framing of science. But he was really clear about the role of both of those as healthy ecosystems. And if you think about it, like a lot of science grads, and I think I've got this incredible group of friends where we span about 8 years, and we all at some point worked at SciTech here over the last 15, 20 years here in Perth. Not all of us at the same time as well, which is also really remarkable as our friends, but all of us have science degrees. And it's really interesting if I look at the group and where they're doing their work. And are any of them in a place of discovery, including those that had PhDs and, you know, did lab work and very like research orientated kind of? The answer is no. They're all in that translation piece. And so a very few number of people will create a career in discovery with respect to the role of science, right? The rest of it is translation, whether that's literal translation, like science communication, whether that's business development, whether that's comms in general, whether that's working through policy, whether that's being an advisor in a company or a role where you are able to do that sense-making piece or interfacing between different stakeholders, like just anything that has anything to do with like science and STEM, that really... That's what we talk about with translation. And yes, the commercialization and entrepreneurship and creating like economic value from the investment of basic research and discovery. I appreciate it's about all of that. But
yes,
those things, Michelle, like we need both. We need discovery and translation, and the base level of being able to like make sense of those and how they intersect with other parts of our world is incredibly valuable.
it is. And there's the parallels between, you know, our own trajectories and the trajectories of all the work that's being done in these spaces, because all of it is about translation. It's about finding the common threads that you can apply in multiple spaces, whether that's in terms of what you've built during your career and what you've learned and what you've pulled in, not just from your professional spaces, but from your recreational and your interests, and seeing how they apply in all these other different ways. And so the translation is... It's very philosophical, but it's about translation of life and the way that you approach things. So many people I speak to who are, you know, mid-career onwards, they've found a common thread. They may not have known what the common thread was at the time, but there was something about what they do or what they enjoy that they carry with them throughout their life, throughout their career. And the ones that have made it work are the ones who've been able to find that common thread in lots of different other industries and different other types of roles and work that they do. And, you know, this is where your group of science friends have sort of built that thing as well, because they've all come from similar-ish sort of backgrounds, but they've been able to figure out how to apply what they do in other ways, in other places, to help other places and other people apply what they do in other ways and other places. This lovely fractal kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's the work that you now do, because you went from, communing with the stars to talking about NASA to the astrophysics, science circus. But the work that you do now at Curtin is strategic. It's high level translation and trying to figure out where all of these amazing things that people are creating, building, work elsewhere.
Mm.
So how did you figure out that was the thing that you do, that you like to do?
Wow, thank you. That was the best summary. I can't even get Claude to summarize this for me. Sorry, no, this is great.
Excellent. I'm better than Claude. Fabulous.
Yeah. I will say though, I think it always works looking back, right? The hindsight is wonderful. The path is very clear once you've walked it. And that is the point. So I think I realized, I think I was solving problems using science communication. Let's call it that. And then it became solving strategic problems in the framing of what tools I had, which was effectively science communication with the underpinnings and love of the science foundation, the training, the degree in that sense. And I guess that shows up in interesting ways. And I think of at SciTech, my time there, and kind of going in sort of that sort of management, still wanting to be close to that delivery, but thinking of that sort of management place and managing theatre and events there. One of the things was, I wrote this story. I wrote science shows that had no words. So it was an amazing process. I'm happy, again, I can talk about, I loved that. I ended up touring them around the world because we could open and show them at international science festivals without translations.
That's amazing. And I would definitely like to talk to you about that at some point.
And look, and there's many people now who have gone on and done, there's even someone who's done their masters and I think even trying to do a PhD. It's one of the ways that we can make sense of this. And I guess suddenly we had something that we could contribute in the sense of financially for some of these contracts. We were able to get paid. There was a business opportunity in that sense, particularly at the time where there was more of these festivals. And they were looking for international participation. The Abu Dhabi Science Festival is one of them. And it was aided by the fact that I had worked at Edinburgh Science Festival when I lived abroad, and the director there, who I worked closely with, was advising into, and basically his team were kind of establishing this for them. And so that was, again, happy, wonderful connections there. But we also took it to China, and we took it all around rural Western Australia to all the ag shows, in 2011 for International Year of Chemistry. And it was called IYC, Ignite Your Curiosity. The cool thing was the facilitation at the end of the show. And you were able to effectively give people the opportunity to ask questions and make sense of what they saw. But the process of it wasn't us telling you what you needed to know. And the barriers of language. So if you're in a shopping centre, you immediately can hear and see that this isn't for me as an adult, for example. I'll usher the kids forward. But actually we wanted to create connection moments with people in the audience, including strangers, which was so cool, particularly when someone, I'm going to just tell the story, I won't say names, but there was someone that was quite skeptical about this in practice, and in Singapore, and no, it was in Abu Dhabi. And it was beautiful because at the end of this show, and it ends with cornflower fire breathing, it's amazing, but and gross, and it was a fun one to train people in. But the thing was at the end, or maybe it was an elephant's toothpaste, something. So this person was standing in the kind of plaza, and a just member of the public was there, I think, with his family. And at that, he turned around and almost he didn't grab him, but he almost grabbed his arm, let's call it figuratively, and it was he was oh, elephant's toothpaste. Do you think that was elephant's toothpaste? And he's oh, I see. I get it now. And so, again, I didn't go out to solve that problem. I didn't go out to go, right, everyone, we have a market problem. What we need to do is work out our product differential and how we, it was literally, I was I want to do cool science stuff. These are really, I had an opportunity. We got a grant, SciTech had a grant. And so it was a really amazing kind of set of circumstances. But I think it was about what you do with it next. Same thing with After Dark, adult-only events. At the time, so I'd come from Edinburgh to SciTech, and had seen the adult programming as just a standard as part of these, big international and local festival formats. It's not weird now that there's things for grown-ups, but that's not always the way it was seen, particularly here in Western Australia at SciTech. And so there was a few of us, who were observing what was happening when grown-ups kind of step back when there's kids around, because it's like, oh, it's for them, And so, there was a few of us who were like, I was like, we could do this. And, at the time, the manager of the events, and we did this spreadsheet, and it was like 17 people will cover costs. And so we pitched it, and, 1,000 people showed up, and history. So these are these things, and I guess coming back to the lens of my 10 years at Curtin, same thing. I've had 4 different roles and lots of different things, from fireballs in the sky, and that was an incredible program. It was an outreach program based off the Desert Fireball Network and the research. And at the time, it was about bringing the community into that fold and building up the awareness and understanding of the role that this plays globally, but as well, just that fascination, right? And, we had this app, and I didn't develop this app, but the app was ready to kind of scale. The program was ready to scale, and there was a link with NASA. We were the Australian node formally. The director had gone and signed, the professor, Phil, gone and signed over in the US, because we didn't have an agency, so he could just go up and do that with an Australian flag behind him, and through the Solar System Exploration Research Institute. And so, my role was to scale that sort of kind of outreach, working with them, with NASA for the citizen science component, but also just, again, connecting and making sense of how to position things. So the relevance, the meaning, the relevance, and the importance was seen depending on who it was and what problem it was. Then with the Space Science and Technology Centre, working, with Phil closely to, his vision and how we can make that happen and how we can influence the ecosystem. And so founding the Space Science and Technology Centre, and little things like, we weren't allowed to call ourselves a centre at the time. For bureaucratic reasons. We had gotten our funding before all of the sort of internal committee stuff had been, for example, signed off of, this is the name and now you can have a website, was effectively what we were waiting for. So I couldn't tell people who we were formally, and how do we create a story about that it's not just the fireballs in the sky and the Desert Fireball Network and the meteor stuff, when we had this suite of other planetary science going on. And so, teamed up with at the time illustration, so in HAS at Curtin, and it was like I was the industry, and I pitched to them, the NASA visions of the future and those beautiful retro futuristic posters.
Yes.
Oh my God, they're amazing.
That was such a good time.
So good. And the guy, it's from the visualization studio in JPL at Caltech. And again, having the opportunity to speak with them about this was they loved that it was, or the guy I spoke to, he was like, this is awesome. I had no idea. It's like, yes, you're the center of the world, JPL. No, my Ames friends would be very upset by that. Don't worry. Ames is the greatest gift that NASA has given, not JPL.
You're all favourite children. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, they all live. I say they all live, but there's a lot of them that live literally just down the road now. And It's beautiful being these NASA expats as grown-ups. These are some of my, dear friends in my community, with my daughter as well. And she doesn't think it's weird that they're building a little ISS robot detector that, or that has launched things and was the PM of BioSentinel that's,
Her expectation management's going to be through the roof.
Space, Binar Space, I think all of our kids from the Binar Space program, of us who have kids, they just sort of think that's not I brought it into a preschool. I brought the Eng model into the preschool, and it's just no, you don't understand. This is a literal spacecraft. It's flying. They built it, and I helped make the beakers. So all of these things, what I'm trying to build, Michelle, is at the time, I did not realise that. If someone had said to me then, you're going to go into strategy and governance, and you're going to build frameworks, and you're going to look at things of capacity building and how you scale that and advise in, and then do some translation and input work to feed that back into, And also, if I would have a very different trajectory, and I would have had a different education. And to be honest, when I look at that, I don't feel that's not a good fit for me. So I'm very grateful that the set of circumstances has led me to being in this position. And I'm very proud that I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Earth and Planetary Sciences at Curtin. I get to work with some of the most incredible individuals from the spectrum of Earth and planetary sciences who are literally in the discovery and are making sense of the world and who do care deeply about how their science shows up. Our whole thing is for a better tomorrow. And given the challenges that we as society face, a lot of them have deep roots in these particular sciences. And we're not solving them alone. But there's a sense of the quantifiable data, for example, the measurement and interpretation layer of what is reality and then how we make sense of decisions on top of that. This is a critical component of some of these big initiatives, these big things of how we make decisions, of resources from a political point of view, from a geopolitical relationship point of view around the world, and how we decide and prioritize how we want to live. It's a fundamental layer, and it's incredible that I get to see that. And I guess for the public to, appreciate its role that it plays and how to show those benefits. And even if it's not the Earth and planetary sciences component that you go down, what those tools, rather than the content, it's the context. And I think this is even more important when we look how AI is shifting that bottleneck, rather than price per line of code is a completely different thing now. It used to be, like yourself, you highly trained, experienced, it takes, each line of code. And then the fact that goes into a product that gets shipped and deployed into the world, that is a very expensive process. And it's not to say that AI is now completely, we don't need, I'm not even going to entertain that stupid argument. Of course, we still need very, 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 very good. Very, very good, software engineering. I'm not saying code is dead, but it's the cost of that is going down, right? Similar to when electricity, right? And hot water even into your home. Frank Green did a great rant about this, about the Jessens paradox. Feel free to link that. It was a fun one, by the way. So now that's shifting that bottleneck rather from the access to the expertise or the information. Yes, I can just look up and have, or create an agent that is going to be, the most meticulous, I don't know, coder for, you could just create, and the access is not the problem. AI shifted the bottleneck to the verification and judgment.
And that's where a lot of the problems were, because so many of the things that we were doing in these areas were highly manual and very labor intensive. So being able to shift that from being able to take, they can take the scut work. Now we can actually figure out what the meaning is and where to get that value from it. And that's where the money is, the literal and figurative money is.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important thing for the public to be aware of as well. And again, coming at it from the joy and the wonder and the awe of the literal universe, figuratively and metaphorically, as well as going, there's some very real things that we can do to influence that on our own level at our everyday. And yes, you can scale that to have an impact to your community, contributions. And I think with this sort of other flip, the National Science Week that's coming up, which is really exciting in August, and, having that week where we say, it's actually its 30th year this year of National Science Week, and it's this grassroots biggest, science festival, right? And so it can reach about 300 million people in Australia, events all over, events out the wazoo, 2,500 events, right? So nationally, that's coordinated by Inspiring Australia, and that's the sort of governments we will engage. It's a strategy for public engagement with science, right? And then each state and territory have their sort of body that runs and their own sort of coordinating committee and grants and things like that. And so in WA, that's Inspiring Australia WA, or Inspiring Western Australia. And so it's exciting in this, well, I'm excited because this year, I'm its chair. And so looking at from the public component of this grassroots, it's making this national policy position real in a grassroots local impact kind of way. And I think this mechanism is really powerful. And to the point of having science and its relevance, and STEM and its relevance to society, particularly in the sense of making sense of those, like, you know, the bottleneck shifting with AI, for example, and then the premium of, you know, human judgment and that trust brokering and validation, like how important that is now. And that if you want to sharpen your skills to make yourself competitive, guess what? A STEM degree is an absolutely brilliant, or like, you know, STEM learning, let's call it a STEM framework paired with maybe even like an entrepreneurial framework. How do we create value? And this is how, you know, how do we create knowledge? Then, you know, how do we translate that knowledge into value? And then how do you onwards to that?
Yep.
Like, that's a great framework. And I think just being able to look at how community groups or like programs that happen in the regions and in our community, even in the metro region, can be connected under this big umbrella that says, we celebrate this. And yes, it's for the joy and the wonder, and the, like, we'll explode some stuff and ministers will get in front of the primary schools and like do a thing. Like, it's awesome, right? Like, we're saying it's relevant from our highest levels in Australia. And we give that permission and ownership to the sort of grassroots communities who are wanting to either use science to engage with their community. They might not be a science organisation or traditionally, you know, a STEM-based organisation, right, or group, but they can use STEM, you know, to engage their usual audience or create a new audience from that. And I just feel like that engine, as a, you know, it's not just Science Week as well. We do WA STEM grants that sort of help kind of make National Science Week every week of the year, Michelle. But it's coming down to that sense of trust and belonging, right? And so if we can give that to our community so they feel like they're a part of it.
And it gives them agency to engage with it as well, because there was another guest was speaking about an MIT program that they observed, and it was for kids. And it was a coding program, but it was for problem solving. And it's like, well, you don't have to solve the world's problems. What's something in your community? What's a small change that you can make in your community? And how can you do that? Through problem solving, through coding, through whatever it is, whatever tools that you have, you can make a difference in your own space.
Absolutely. And it's empowering. And I think I did do, it's that joke of like, oh, curiosity is curiosity is a pathway to empowerment, title of your TED Talk. I was like, actually, it was in 2014. I felt very out of self in the talk's there. It's great. It's obviously 12 years old. But the crux of it, I still kind of stand behind. From the beginning of this talk, Michelle, we've spoken about that whole like curiosity-led inquiry and making sense of who you are and yourself and your place in the world. And here are some tools. And if you keep curious, I think it's the best possible way to keep yourself open. But it's also the best possible, like open for growth, open for making sense of, you know, even in conflict. Like, it's not like, oh, let's all be empathetic. Which is also very valuable. I'm not saying that that's not. But, you know, when you're in a conflict with someone and, you know, there's this sort of like, oh, how could, and you're like, I wonder why. What is their framework? What is their analysis of the evidence? What is the model they have created from the evidence that they have access to? What is that interpretation? It's not to say that facts aren't facts and evidence isn't facts. It's about the interpretation, right? And so it's not like we choose our own facts and no, it's about the interpretation of this information. But
and how you came to that conclusion.
Yes. That's a process of science, right? That's why it's very rigorous, and it's meant to be, you know, very rigorous and open and peer review. And it's like, I did this and I got this answer. Can you do it? Can you, because I think this is pretty important. We didn't know this before. So how do you take things from the unknown and put it into the known, when that's usually a really scary thing when we think of the unknown, right? And it's like, don't be afraid because everything we know has come from there, right? Like, but the process of doing that, I think, is the empowering component. It's not to say it's the only component, but my gosh, I think it's a really strong fundamental thing. And yeah, it is. Curiosity is a pathway to empowerment.
Absolutely.
And it makes science, I think, very personal. It makes it very meaningful for the self, for me, And then it's how it makes it relevant for my world, and it's how it makes it significant for the world.
Yep.
And to be able to have something that permeates across all of those different layers of abstraction, I think is just an absolutely incredible, beautiful thing. So I would love for us to be more curious and create spaces where we can practice that and give permission to that, and that we can appreciate what adult curiosity looks like rather than just delegating all of that to the kiddos.
I think so. And that's such an important thing, especially because, like, when you talked about that person who had that response to the show in Abu Dhabi, and it's because you found a way to connect with them on whatever it was that they used to construct whatever their knowledge is.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to achieve. We want to be able to reach those people at that point where they go, oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah, because it's their framing, it's their worldview, you know. And I know some of the best communicators. In fact, I'm going to give a shout out to Jacob Martin, who's an incredible scientist. He's a Forrest Fellow. I'm incredibly inspired by him, actually. His ability to sit with people and have conversations around very controversial topics and to connect with them in a way that validates them as a person, and that is how you can help change people's minds and world views. And he knows this because he was someone that used to be very skeptical and didn't believe in value, and he had a conversation that changed his life. And I think as someone who contributes so greatly to science through, and in all aspects, yes, his actual, caliber is objectively excellent, but his championship of all of the human components that go into that, he's an incredible mentor to many scientists and emerging students, but it's that thing of the public. It's like, it's the trust and the respect and just going to where they are. And he regularly does that. Last time I saw him last week, he was literally like, I'm going to sit with these people tonight and we're going to talk about this. And it's like, wow. I mean, the world changes. Another one of my mentors who I get to still work with, he says the world changes one conversation at a time, right? And again, science is just one of those things you can converse about. And the tools of science and inquiry and sense making and reality checking is also another way we can connect and change the world through either conversing one-to-one or creating contribution at scale.
Yeah, because science communication is about just communication. It's reaching people where they need to be reached, how they want to be reached, and in a respectful way that allows them to see your perspective and for you to see theirs. And that's just beautiful. And that's just human connection right there.
Very authentic.
Yes, super authentic. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of people now feel that that's lacking in a lot of the way that we engage with each other. Just because we're not taking the time to sit and have these conversations like your mentor is, to kind of just slow everything down and connect and commune and, debrief with the stars. So, full circle. That's all it is.
Beautiful. We'll come back to that always.
Always.
I don't like it.
So this feels like a nice kind of way to round off, especially because you did talk about what you want people to be able to do more. So one of the, probably not the last, but getting towards the last questions that I tend to ask is, what advice would you give someone who would like to do what you do, and what advice should they ignore?
Definitely ignore that. That's all well and good, but what's your job going to be?
Yep.
Because for two things. One, that's all well and good is also a legitimate path. And yes, there may be logistics involved with it, is what I just stumbled on my words then. So yeah, there's a legitimate path, and yes, there's logistics involved, or something to pursue. But also it comes to that sense of again, the saying, you can't be what you can't see, or if you can see it, you can be it. and knowing that you often have your world changed in some shape or form because there's micro or macro light bulb moments that go off, right? So that process of becoming is something that is always happening. And so the thing that you might have as like, I want to do this because I want to get this good job, or because I want to make sure that, you know, when someone says, oh, what do you do? You know, like, yes, this is the thing I'm going to do to get that good job. And it's often because people just want the best for everyone, right? So it's not that it's about like it's ridiculous advice. That's not what I mean. I just think that there's so much more in that process, and that it doesn't, like, if you're on a trajectory that feels very logical, and, you know, I think particularly in a realm of specialization, you know, you feel like you need to get in early, and like, because specializations take time to literally foster, to grow, to learn, to acquire, to cultivate, right? And so the feeling of like, and then you get at the end of, you know, 10 years or whatever and go and do something else often feels like sunken cost fallacy,
Yes.
which is also because it's not like, oh, I've jumped off the path and I need to find my way back onto the path because I'm going to just like explore this bit over here. It's like, that's life. Life is going to happen. And those that build the muscle of operating in uncertainty are going to find their way through things. And I think that's part of this, like, do this, output that, you're sorted. And I just think, you know, we're all trying to find the best possible bets to make in this world, more so than ever, for loads of different reasons. So I guess it's just, the world's not going to stop changing, and neither are you. And so I think that
And that's a
holding
good thing.
space, it is so good. But that's literally the process of becoming, right? So it's okay to be like, if you're fit, like, it's the best match fit, right? Like, what's the match fit here? And if a specialization is the thing for you, like, great, like, go forth. But it is okay to have range. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to have a path or a trajectory that doesn't make sense to anyone, including yourself. But if you have that sort of internal check of, you know, am I having fun? Does this mean something to me? You know, whatever your internal principles are, right? And yes, there's no substitution for like hard work at some point. Like, I'm not saying for anyone that's doing anything hard that it's easy, and that's not it. Like, I remember the gaming Hard Fun, I think it's called, that she did a TED talk a while back about that framing of you know, it's hard. They're working hard at these things and hard problems. There's something rewarding about it. So just because it's hard doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. In fact, it actually is probably recognition that it's worthy. But stack your like tool set with the best possible range of tools to help you kind of get through those things is where I guess I'm coming from with this. And
Yes.
as I said, I realized years after that actually the gift was I never had to like define myself by somebody else's standards. I never had to describe what it was precisely in their view. And because for a lot of people, they didn't know. Like, a lot of no one knew what a scientist was. I didn't know what a scientist was. I didn't know how to draw them when I was a kid, you know, doing the little like, what would you like to be when you grow up in primary school? And, you know, drew a nurse and a doctor and like a lawyer. And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah, and you only have that frame of reference of what's around you at the time. So you don't know
Yes.
what you don't know when you're at that age, except for what's around you and what you see.
Yeah. And I think science communication, you know, to answer your explicit question, again, I don't think it doesn't have to be a job description as well. And even being a professional science communicator, I actually have never, no, that's a lie. I think I had that in Edinburgh. I don't think that's actually been my job title explicitly. You know, I've definitely had outreach in it. I've been Planetary Science Outreach. I've been Research Ambassador. I've been Deputy Director of the Space Science and Technology Centre, and now Director of Strategic Initiatives for Earth and Planetary Science. That's just in the last 10 years at Curtin. Yeah. Right? And so none of that necessarily indicated exactly what my training was and exactly what it was that I was bringing to that role. And I think that is part of the craft as well as the skill of what goes into that. And if I think of for people today, the tools you have access to when you're starting out, and the access. So again, changing the bottleneck from access to the judgment component. Don't forget to invest in your judgment muscle. And so that, I think, is the pretty critical thing. And maybe that's where I come from with, don't worry about what your job description and your job title will be. Worry about the thing that lights you up and that will make you feel like you're valuable and you're contributing. And I definitely think it's shifting to that whole sense of, trust and judgment and, validation. How do we make sense of the fire hose of information that we have here, and the data that turns into information, and information into knowledge, and then ultimately knowledge into wisdom.
Yep. I think that's such a hard thing for, even before the AI stuff, we were already getting so much information overload just in the way that we had access to things because of the internet. And that judgment part is so important that we're so busy taking it in and consuming it that we're not actually figuring out what it means to us and what we can do with it and why it's important to us specifically and not just to what other people say it is.
Yeah. And so again, what are you building in yourself? What are you investing in at the end of the day? And if it's yourself, then that's the correct answer, because wherever you will be,
that's where
wherever you end up, there you'll be, right? And so it's rather than making a plan that will survive the world changing and you changing, it's build that sense of self, that capability or whatever it is that survives the destination changing, What are the things that you can carry with you? And that changes, and how you spend your time as well is another really interesting thing to take notice of. How do you like to spend your time?
Yep.
Learn who you are. That'll be great.
Yeah. I mean, it's only finding out what your identity is. That's
really
all.
Don't tell me, how does this work?
But yeah, it does come back down to understanding who you are. And, it is about your identity and what that means to you and what your values are and, what's important to you to cultivate. And that isn't a label about a job or a role or an industry.
Yes, absolutely. I think, in closing, it's if I look at the world, science changes things when you feel like it belongs to you, right?
Yeah.
At all of those levels, meaning, relevance, importance. So I love science. I think that's good.
In summary, science is great.
I love it, but I also love a lot of other things. And I get really passionate about a lot of other things. And that doesn't mean that I'm any less of a scientist or any less of someone that identifies in that particular way, because there isn't really a box, to be honest.
And I think that makes you even more of a scientist, because you are doing that exploration. You are doing that love of finding out. And I think that's the whole point, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe we do need to think broader about, rather than science as just the process of discovery and someone in a lab, but that sense of translation and making sense of ourselves and the world around us. And that, when we talk about science, we're talking about both discovery and translation. Maybe that might be helpful for how we can help appreciate and celebrate this incredible thing that brings so much to who we are as a species.
Yes. Big questions, easy to solve.
Yep. It's, gosh. How do we, we're still figuring it out. It's okay. It's okay. Is it? It's okay to keep being figured out. I don't have the answers, Michelle. I don't have the answers.
And I think that's important, because that uncertainty is what keeps us wondering and keeps us asking. And
absolutely.
Just it's okay not to have the answers as long as you're going to look for some.
Yeah. And I hope my previous versions of myself are proud of myself now. That whole thing of what you would have on your epitaph, or whatever it is, what would you say on your, I'm I really hope that I can still impress my younger self. And I'm trying to hold that framework right now today of going, I really hope, looking back at this time right now, I'm going to feel similar to how I do looking at all of the different junctures of life and working things out, and the messiness and the exuberance and the too muchness and the maybe not enough-ness, but actually it's all just making sense of who we are and our world in it, and ourselves in it. And so, maybe, I know everyone's like, be kind to yourself. And I'm like, I really impress the heck out of myself.
Set the bar
I
high.
want that breathing circus running around like flat, like in all of the random, climbing a mountain, doing some theatre in Scotland, Ben to, fire breathing in China and almost getting arrested. It's just, there's a lot of things there, and we are a mashup of what we let in. And I feel that, even the bad stuff that's in there, I still, I'm trying to hold her as much as I can. It's not just the best version of ourselves. It's like loving the pretty shitty bits of ourselves as well, I think.
Well, it's because we're always growing. We're always changing. We're allowed to have good and bad times and good and bad us. We're not perfect, and that's okay as long as we're working to be better all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go science.
And go science.
No, thank you. Absolutely, yes. Michelle. Gosh, what a ride. This has been great.
This has been great. Yeah, so if people would like to know more about what you do, where can they go?
I'm not really present on the socials. I apologize, but that's okay. It's not about me. You can find out about incredible National Science Week stuff that are happening in your area by coming into the website that's wherever it will be. Yep. I don't know if it's on screen or wherever down there. And even just like popping in either your postcode or an area and just having a look at what's happening around you. Appreciating each metro area in Australia has a lot of action in that week from the 15th to the 23rd of August. However, there are some regional hubs and regional events as well. So if you're listening to this somewhere around Australia, do pop your postcode in and have a look at what's going on if you're interested in getting involved. There's also a bunch of toolkits and media you can get involved. National Science Week, and same thing at WA STEM with the Inspiring Australia, Western Australia. So that's one place for the sort of public grassroots local impact, meeting our sort of policy big framing of science engagement in Australia. And of course, if you love earth and planetary sciences, you want to know a little bit more about what we do, there's plenty of places. Just Curtin, earth and planetary sciences. But also just continue being curious and finding interesting things, and I'll link some random stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this. It has been wonderful again talking with you about life, the universe, and everything. Yeah, it's been wonderful hearing about your incredible journey and the way that, it all does connect together, because communication is everything and science makes it all work. So thank you so much for sharing that. It has been absolutely wonderful speaking with you again today. And
thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Absolutely, I will. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this conversation, please let me know. Subscribe to this show, leave us a rating, and share this with your geeky or geek-curious friends. You can also support Steam Powered on Patreon under Steam Powered Show, the link for which will also be in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.